Her behavior at work, avoiding eye contact with her coworkers and making small talk only when necessary, was puzzling. Every weekend evening, she would do something mysterious and suspicious. Her behavior made everyone curious. Curiosity finally won over them. When he looked up through the window of the community center, the view inside surprised everyone. Maya arrived at Horizon Tech at 7:45 every morning. Her work was always completed ahead of schedule, yet she remained a mystery to everyone. Efficient but forgettable, she kept her head down and rarely engaged in office conversations. During lunch, she was never seen in the cafeteria, instead disappearing to stairwells or empty conference rooms, only to return precisely 30 minutes later. After failed attempts to include her, colleagues stopped trying. Maya became just another face in the crowd, except for one curious habit. Every Friday evening, Maya would ask the cafeteria manager for leftover food that would otherwise be thrown away. Staff began setting aside sandwiches, salads, and pastries for her regular collection. They even prepared extra on Fridays, knowing Maya would ensure nothing was wasted. Richard Bennett wasn't your typical CEO. At 45, he had built Horizon Tech from a startup to a mid-sized firm with over 300 employees. Despite the growth, Richard still walked the floors daily, learning names and staying connected to everyone. He believed success came from understanding the people behind the numbers. One Friday evening in October, Richard was working late reviewing quarterly reports. Around 7 p.m., he headed to the nearly empty cafeteria for coffee. As he approached, he noticed Maya accepting several bags of food from the cafeteria manager. The manager was smiling, adding an extra muffin to the collection. Maya's typically reserved demeanor had softened, her gratitude evident even from a distance. What caught Richard's attention was a fragment of conversation. He heard Maya mention how they would really appreciate this tonight, especially the fresh fruit. They, Richard wondered, who was she referring to? In all his efforts to know his employees, Maya remained an enigma. Her files showed solid performance, but little personal information. She had no photos on her desk and no personal touches in her workspace. Something about this mystery tugged at Richard. As Maya balanced her bags of food and headed toward the exit, an impulse overtook him. He grabbed his coat and followed at a discreet distance. In the parking garage, Richard expected Maya to head toward a car. Instead, she walked to the bus stop outside. Richard hesitated but decided to follow. The mystery of this quiet woman and her Friday food collection had captured his curiosity. He hailed a rideshare to follow the bus. As they traveled, the landscape transformed dramatically. Gleaming corporate towers gave way to strip malls, then to neighborhoods with fewer chain stores and more independent businesses. 20 minutes later, Maya disembarked in a neighborhood worlds away from Horizon Tech. Dim streetlights, security gates on storefronts, and for rent signs dominated the area. The sidewalks were cracked with weeds pushing through the concrete. Richard stepped out half a block away, acutely aware of how his suit made him stand out. The evening air carried the mixed aromas of nearby kitchens and distant traffic. Maya walked briskly, clearly familiar with the area, turning down a side street lined with worn apartment buildings. She approached a small building with peeling blue paint, East Side Community Youth Center. A broken swing hung from a rusted chain, and faded chalk drawings decorated the concrete entrance. Maya paused, shifting her bags to free a hand. Richard waited in the shadows, uncomfortable with his surveillance, but unable to leave. When she opened the door, the sound of children's voices greeted her. The noise made Richard pause. His curiosity wouldn't let him leave. He approached cautiously, peering through a window covered by faded paper decorations. The scene inside made Richard freeze. The room was filled with about 15 children of various ages, from kindergartners to young teens. They sat at worn tables while Maya and two elderly volunteers unpacked the food she had brought. A single overhead light flickered occasionally, casting dancing shadows across the peeling wallpaper. Maya moved through the room with a warmth and animation Richard had never witnessed at the office. Her entire demeanor had changed. Where she was reserved and almost invisible at work, here she was vibrant and full of life. She greeted each child by name, kneeling to make eye contact with the younger ones. She asked about a drawing, ruffled a child's hair, and helped a small girl with her milk carton. The connection between Maya and these children was palpable, built on what was clearly weeks and months of consistent care. The food from Horizon Tech's cafeteria was being carefully arranged on plates. The children waited patiently, though their eager eyes followed every movement. For some, Richard realized, this might be their first proper meal since school lunch. One small boy, no more than 7, kept glancing at the food and then quickly looking away, as if afraid his hunger might show too plainly on his face. These weren't Maya's children. This was a community program for children whose parents worked evening shifts or couldn't afford childcare or proper meals. Maya was spending her Friday evenings volunteering with children in need. The realization hit Richard hard. While his executive team regularly discarded half-eaten catering trays, one of his lowest-paid employees was salvaging what she could to feed hungry children. Richard stepped back, his mind racing. Horizon Tech made the expected corporate donations to high-profile charities and sponsored tables at galas. But Maya's quiet commitment to these children seemed more authentic than all of his company's carefully calculated charitable gestures combined. The following Monday, Richard requested a meeting with Maya. She arrived precisely on time, her face hiding her nervousness. She had never been called to the CEO's office before. Richard could see the worry in her eyes as she perched on the edge of the chair. She probably thought she was in trouble for taking the food. Richard began by asking about the community center. Surprise replaced anxiety on Maya's face. Hesitantly at first, then with growing animation, she explained how the after-school program struggled to provide even basic snacks for children from families facing food insecurity. Some had parents working evening shifts who couldn't afford childcare. The center operated on a shoestring budget, relying entirely on volunteers and donations. Maya had discovered the center shortly after moving to the city. What started as a few hours of volunteering each week had grown into a deeper commitment. When she noticed how much food was discarded at the cafeteria each day, the connection seemed obvious to her. As she spoke, Richard saw a completely different person emerge. The quiet administrative assistant transformed into a passionate advocate. Her eyes lit up when describing the children's progress in their modest reading program. By the end of their conversation, Richard had made a decision. Within a month, Horizon Tech launched a company-wide initiative. The cafeteria now prepared proper meals for the community center 3 times a week. Employees were encouraged to volunteer during paid work hours. Richard established a foundation to support similar programs throughout the city. Maya was promoted to coordinate the company's new community outreach department with a substantial salary increase. Her firsthand understanding of community needs made her perfect for the role. The children at the center now had regular nutritious meals, new books, updated computers, and a renovated playground. Other community centers across the city began receiving similar support. What began as a simple request for leftover food revealed the invisible struggles many families faced. It transformed not just the lives of those children, but the entire corporate culture. The quiet administrative assistant who once hid in stairwells now had Richard's ear on matters of community involvement. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with the smallest acts of compassion, noticed by the right person at the right time. And sometimes the most important talents aren't found on resumes, but discovered when someone looks beyond the surface. What would you do if you discovered a colleague quietly making a difference in ways you never imagined?